have been covering the state of evangelicalism in America for over 28 years. And I'm seeing people in groups and organizations do things and say things and work with people and promote initiatives and conferences and ideas with social justice change agents, cultural Marxists. I never thought these people would be involved with. Never. We've got a serious problem. And as the Center for Security Policy, which is not an evangelical or Christian organization, is a secular think tank, put out a 35-page report 2 weeks ago, 1st of November, declaring that interfaith dialogue is a great threat to our national security, and the #1 target is evangelical Christians. So the point their report is making is not from a religious standpoint, but a national security standpoint. And I make the same point in the book, Marxianity, and in the movie, Sabotage. They are going after the evangelical church because they know that the last standing group that they have to take over after they've already taken over the education, our colleges, our elementary schools, secondary schools, they've taken over the media, they've taken over the military, they've turned the military into a social experiment. I mean, we have so much we can say about that. They've taken over so much of the institutions of our country. If they can take over the churches in America, and particularly the conservative branch of Christianity known as evangelicalism, it's over. And that's what even the Center for Security Policy said. Evangelicals are the prime target. Why? That's the group that, if any group would understand the worldview war, Marxism, Islam, postmodernism, whatever the major 6 dominant worldviews are, as I list in my book, if any group should understand this and counter it, surely it'll be the evangelical Christians, right? Well, they're being taken over. They're buying into interfaith dialogue. They're buying into social justice that is really socialism. They're buying into the communist lie of white privilege. They're buying into the idea that we need to welcome all the immigrants, even if they're unvetted, because this is what Jesus would want us to do. And they're being taken over by liberal progressive foundations like George Soros's group, Open Society, that is now funding groups like the Evangelical Immigration Table. This, again, is specifically called the Evangelical Immigration Table. And they're trying to convince and they have the biggest leaders of Protestant denominations, pro-family leaders, that Jesus would be all about welcoming the stranger in a foreign land. And I was a stranger and you welcomed me, using Leviticus 19 and Matthew 24 out of context to convince so-called evangelicals today that if you don't buy into socialism and communism and amnesty for illegals, you're not a legitimate Christian. And one of the people helping is Jim Wallace, who's been involved in pretty much every communist revolution in South America for the last 40 years, who openly declares Christians as demons, working for darkness as forces of darkness. And now in the last few days, we have audio from the 1st of November at the World Parliament of Religions, which is a collection of leaders from around the globe under the United Nations. These are not just religious leaders. These are government leaders from around the globe got together in Canada at the World Parliament of Religions. And Jim Wallace, among others, spoke, and he declared that people in America who declare themselves to be Christians, who voted for Trump, who are not for bringing all these immigrants from Islamic nations here, they are now the demons that we're battling and the forces of darkness. And now they declared that America is filled with not just white supremacy, but Christian supremacy. So now if you're a capitalist and a Christian or a conservative, you are a racist. And this is what they do. They create a victim coalition. They grab together people and they create offenses. And then they say, who are the victims? And they list all the victims, the poor, the immigrants, the feminists, whoever. And who are the ones doing the victimizing them? Capitalists, Christians, conservatives, males, white men particularly. And this is the strategy of the Frankfurt School, the cultural Marxists who came here to America in 1933, set it all up, wrote about it extensively in their papers and books. This is not conspiracy. They openly bragged about it. Created a coalition of victims, and now all the problems we see in America, they're going to blame it on capitalists, conservatives, Christians, and white men.